All right, today we are doing the Linux tier list. This would be a fun one. It's something that people have asked for, and I've never actually done just because, I think honestly, when it comes to Linux distributions, they can all look and feel however you want. It just is a matter of your skills. So if someone says this distribution's better than that distribution, it's almost like a telltale sign that they don't really know a lot about Linux. But having said that, the one thing distributions do is give you different starting points, and really it's a good way to kind of like tier these out. So that's my thought process and how we'll be scoring them. It'll be kind of funny. I think we'll make a lot of people mad because most distributions don't really have a point to me, and that's going to make some people mad because they probably dedicated years of their life to making a Linux distribution, and I'm going to just be like, hey, there's no point in it. Just use Debian. You're probably going to hear that a lot, or just use Arch, because downstream distributions that add very little or just put a theme on the desktop are kind of like a blight on Linux a lot of times. Now, there are some distributions that people don't hear about and know, and we'll go over those that you might just be like, oh crap, I didn't even know what that distribution was. And if it's creative or unique in a certain way, man, I'd love to shed some light on that. But if it's just another fork of Debian, it's gonna be some bad. People are gonna be mad when I spell these things out, because you can do pretty much a lot of these distributions do. There's gonna be some ones in here that people are like really in love with, where I'm like, yeah, but you probably should just set this up yourself. So let's get into it. I'll probably let chat fill out a little bit. Let's talk to chat a bit, and then we'll get into an actual tier list. I probably should pull this up. I did pull down all the icons. All right, I'm making all these tiers. So we have Supreme, the best of the best. This is where pretty much everyone ends up, no matter what kind of user you are. If you've been on Linux for probably 4 or 5 years, typically you end up in this tier. You have the amazing for new users. These are necessarily forks or downstream distributions from this, but are pretty well organized and have a good tool set for new users. More advanced users typically stay away from these distros, or they may just not want to mess around with some of the settings, so they'll go ahead and use them. But that's it. Then we'll have like a business tier, where mostly used for like business customers and things. You have the creative and unique tier, where they're actually not just a fork. They're actually doing something unique, and we can explain what that is. There's the lightweight potato tier. These are like when you find a laptop that's 10 years old and you're like, crap, I got to put something somewhat modern on it. You might toss one of these distros on it. We got the devil tier, because there's a lot of distributions that are just plain the devil. I think we know what's going to end up in this tier, but, we'll see what ends up finding a home here. And then we have the one tier that's probably going to have just a ton of distributions. It's just going to be littered. That's why I put it at the bottom, and that is downstream and pointless, or are pointless. I should probably downstream and pointless, I should say. Is basically where this is going to be. And this is where people are going to get mad when I toss a ton of distros in there, just because I'm just like, And then we've got 38 distros. I pulled in a huge array of distros. There's going to be some that we might even have to look up. I know almost all of these, but some I haven't used extensively. And I kind of will lean on chat a little bit for that, because I know some people in chat, for some of these distros that I haven't used extensively, I want to hear your guys' feedback on, because there's going to be a lot in here. Let's go in presentation mode. Yeah. And then we're going to just be dropping stuff in. Oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. All right. Let's just knock out the Supreme tier real fast. There's only 2 distros that make it to the top tier. And these distros really should not come as a surprise to anybody that does desktop Linux. Because when it comes to desktop Linux, you're either an Arch user or you're a Debian user. That's it. There's nothing else that goes in this tier. Almost everything else in here is just a fork. Or a more unique use case. But when it comes to desktop Linux, I just have a hard time taking anything else seriously from a desktop. Now, I used to throw like Fedora in here, but with all the Rel drama, Fedora is something different now. And it's something to where I can't recommend it, and nor could I take it seriously as a main desktop distro anymore. I know that's going to make some people mad, but it's kind of just how it is. So, that's the first part. Now, I think we just go through the list, because there's going to be some in here that you're like, oh, next up, Alma Linux. Where should we put this one? It's a business distro. It's a one-to-one Rel clone. Rocky Linux would also be in here, but the icon doesn't exist at the time of this writing for the circle. So Alma and Rocky, best for business. Yeah, it's great. It's the CentOS clone. Speaking of CentOS, we still have CentOS. It's kind of pointless. It's CentOS stream. You could possibly put it in the devil tier because it's Red Hat. But let's just get the drama out of the way. And, you know, Red Hat, devil. CentOS, devil. And Fedora, devil tier. I mean, we're just gonna knock all those out, because how it works is Fedora is the biggest upstream. That's where all the beta tests and stuff happens for that. It makes it downstream to CentOS, and then CentOS makes it downstream to Rel, and those are the three distributions and how that works. So that is your Red Hat ecosystem, one that I actually used to love, and it's kind of funny. This actually used to be like this. Fedora would feed into Red Hat Enterprise Linux after a certain period of time, and then CentOS used to be downstream from Rel, almost a one-to-one copy, and then obviously when they bought them out, that all got changed around, and now it looks like this. Super confusing, but that's all Red Hat and IBM's doing. Screw them, they're the devil. Let's move on. I think enough has been said about that drama. Don't want to linger, but for me personally, if I was doing bug fixes or messing around in my desktop Linux, I don't think I'd want to give contributions to a company that's just going to take those contributions and put it behind a subscription paywall. And maybe not a paywall is a good term, because there is a free developer license, but even still, it kind of makes it less of a Linux environment at that point, and it feels very dirty. And not something I would want to be a part of. I'm not knocking anybody that uses these, because they will be used a lot in business. It's just I couldn't see this surviving in the desktop open source ecosystem very much longer, especially how they've kind of mistreated everybody. Let's move on from that. And yeah, that's how that all works. Next up is going to be Alpine Linux. I mean, you could say certain use cases because it goes into Docker containers. You could put best for business because you use these a lot. It's a super tiny distribution. Alpine Linux is just kind of amazing. I've used it a ton in almost any container. A lot of containers do use Alpine just because of its small footprint. Its packaging with APKs is a little strange for those that aren't used to it, but the OpenRC, like the systemd runtimes for Alpine, wow. I mean, the start time's crazy. I did a little small demo on this channel on a live stream, kind of just overviewing Alpine in like 10 minutes. And it was kind of a fun little experiment. But I'd say best for business, because you're going to put these in like Docker containers. And it's really amazing. I don't think you'd really necessarily run this as a desktop, but you will use Alpine Linux quite a bit in business, even though you might not run your desktop as it. So that's kind of where I'm at with Alpine Linux. Antix. Antix I haven't used a whole bunch, but Antix is a lightweight distribution. I put certain use cases on this one. Honestly, I feel like we should exit out real fast and change this up a little bit. I feel like we need a potato tier, because Antix is great for just tossing on a really old machine. So if you've never used Antix before, check it out. It's cool, but let's see what we got. Let's just put potato tier, lightweight, something like that. And let's make a brown color, I guess. We don't have brown. Let's just use gray. Potato tier. And we'll toss that up there. We're going to put put it in the potato tier. Yeah, feel like that's a little bit better. And someone in chat's talking about OpenSUSE. I'd say for OpenSUSE, I've always liked Zypper. I've always liked Yast and how they try to do it. But OpenSUSE at the end of the day is an enterprise Linux distribution, really meant for business. And you know what? I'm going to put it in best for business because it's really just a business product. And OpenSUSE's the upstream of SUSE. And it gives great enterprise support. I like them. I don't use them very often, but I still could definitely see a definite spot for SUSE. It's just not something I definitely would want to run as a main box for me, just because it can get a little bit weird. Now, if you are migrating from like the RHEL environments, or let's say you're in this, Fedora, CentOS, RHEL ecosystem, you're like, hey, after all this drama, I'm getting out. SUSE is actually a really good jumping off point because it can accept RPM packages. And you can actually go right to it. So if there is something special like you're hanging on to Fedora for, moving to SUSE is actually a more intuitive choice than necessarily moving to a whole new ecosystem in the Arch or Debian packages, because this is it. Even though the package manager is not like DNF, it uses Zypper, SUSE is pretty darn solid, which is great. And I believe this one's Arco, or is that Antix? Or not Antix, I think it's... Oh man, I gotta look that one up. I want to say it's Arco Linux. Let's see. Yeah, NixOS is in here. We got Nix. Yeah, Nix is over here. We'll get to it. I know a lot of people have been talking about Nix. Here, we'll just knock out Nix real fast. Business. Business is where Nix is. It's a replicatable environment. It's really meant for businesses. It's amazing. You have one config file. It just does everything for you, and you can replicate it across a ton of business applications. And if you look at NixOS, replicatable, reproducible builds and deployments. I mean, it's right there, kind of the big letters on the screen. So to put it anywhere but the business tier is kind of silly to me, but really cool. I loved my time with Nix. It was a blast. So let's see, what is these? I want to say it's these are two Arch spins. I want to say one's Arco and then the other one is Antigos, I want to say. I'm saying that wrong. Let me look them up for that. What do we got? Arco and Artix. Arco, pointless. Artix, pointless. Just use Arch. Like, they didn't even bother changing the icon that much. I mean, I could see this for like a new user to Arch, where I think they're obviously a little bit more polished for the setup guide and other things, the times I have used them or installed on them. But I mean, to me, I'm just like, why not just use regular Arch at that point? You know, that's kind of where I'm at on that, where I'm thinking, hey, it's kind of pointless, but at that point, why not just use Arch? I suppose for the ease of setup, but if you're on Arch and you don't know what goes into Arch and you start using the AUR, you're screwed. You're gonna break it. So pointless. I would say absolutely pointless, these two distributions. I mean, hell, I know you guys are gonna get mad at me. Let's just go ahead and make some more people upset. Garuda falls in the same category. Now, having said that, Garuda does a fantastic job with theming. The tool set they have, it's a super heavy distro. There's just a ton of crap in there. If there's anything you want to use on your desktop, chances are it's already baked into Garuda. It's also an Arch-based distro, but it probably has a bunch of crap that you don't want. So I'm kind of like, pointless. Just use Arch. Yeah, Endeavour, pointless. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I hate to do this to you, but they're kind of pointless. Again, these are all Arch-based distros that have a cool setup and everything and have some really neat theming and just a ton of crap in them. But why not just use Arch? If you don't know how to do stuff and you're just installing and using the programs from here, you're going to end up breaking it. Recommending this to new users. Yeah, you can toss this in the amazing for new user category, but guess what? After about a month, they're going to get on AUR, break their system. It's pointless. It goes in the pointless category. Fundamentally flawed. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I do steal from the Arco and Garuda team, mind you. They do have an amazing open source, and they do have some amazing theming. So it's not to say the developers are bad. I'm just saying the distribution itself is pointless. I would much rather just be like, ooh, I like what Garuda did here. I'm just gonna steal it. And I could do that in Arch, or I could do it in Debian. So, like, what's the point of the distro? I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I hate it. Oh no, Manjaro. Let's just keep the hate train rolling. I can feel the comments roll in. Manjaro, pointless. Oh, that hurts. I love Philip Mueller, the main dev, amazing guy, an amazing community over in Manjaro. But how many people have a story about Manjaro breaking? I got one. I think I got a couple, just for no reason. And I mean, usually there's a reason when it comes to me, but I updated it and it just broke. And it was because I updated it with Pacman SYU when I should have done like a Pacman YYUC or some crap. I don't remember exactly what it was, but they made a special post and said, don't update the traditional way for this one because it'll break your system. Well, I didn't read the forum post because I was just updating my system and then it just broke. That kind of puts it in the pointless tier. Like, at that point, why not just use Arch? I guess, okay, so we need to be a little more fair. I guess those 5, I have been picking on Arch distros. We need to be a little more fair here. Let's toss some more pointless stuff in here. Well, let's just keep going. Actually, I'm gonna take Deepin out. Feren and Elementary OS. Elementary OS is like a bad Mac ripoff. And there was some like drama about maybe it was coming out. I mean, to me, I don't particularly like the aesthetic of their desktop environment. It's a fork of Ubuntu, so it's downstream from Debian, which goes to Ubuntu, and then it's downstream from Ubuntu, which is Elementary. I've looked at it. I don't see a point in it. I guess it's just nice to have another desktop environment, so maybe you could put this in like a creative tier. Like, instead of certain use cases, let's just put this in creative and unique. And I almost want to put it here because at least it has something that's unique in it, the desktop environment. But it just kind of sucks, and I just don't like it, and I'm just gonna put it in a pointless tier. I don't think very many people use it, and those that do use it end up moving on. I mean, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that? From those that have used Elementary. Yeah. That's just a downstream, double downstream from Debian, and I'm like, I just can't. Yeah. So I have a hard time doing anything with that. Since we did a whole bunch of Arch pointless ones, let's just keep going on pointless Debian distributions. And this one's gonna really make some people mad, and these are people you don't want to get mad. I'm sorry, guys. And I'm sorry ahead of time to the security researchers that should learn Linux. Y'all, I get that this is where you start. I get it. But just use Debian, install the burp suite, install the tools you need. There's no point in Kali or Parrot. Oh no, I know. I'm sorry. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Parrot and Kali. Gah. I do like Parrot more than Kali, even though Kali has a bigger community. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of like, just use Debian. Why? I mean, there's some cool little gimmicks that come with Kali, but they are gimmicks at the end of the day. The cool gimmick I see when it comes to Kali is like Windows mode. You can make Kali, like you can say, hey, I don't want people thinking I'm a hacker, and then you can switch it over to Windows mode. But is that really a feature? That's a gimmick. There's just so many gimmicks that go with that. But as far as the actual like technical backend, it's all based on Debian. It's got a good tool set out of the box for security researchers and those aspiring white hat hackers out there, and probably some black hats too. But at the end of the day, is an expert really going to use Kali or Parrot? Probably not. I mean, oh, I know. I guess we could put it in the amazing for new users category for security researchers, but the problem when I have putting it over here, because honestly, when it comes to Kali and Parrot, I think they're very close to the same. Actually, I like Parrot a little bit better than Kali because it's a little more lightweight, less bloated. Kali seems to just have a lot of pointless crap in it that I'm like, why is this here? Where Parrot is just a little bit lighter weight and a little bit better, I think, in just tool set in general. But I can't put it here. And the reason being is, if you're a professional and you're starting to get into security and you want to get into ethical hacking, you should know your shit. You should not be a new Linux user. I get you might want to start here, but at that point you need to evolve if you're really diving into these things. If you really are getting into a lot of ethical hacking, relying and kind of using these as a crutch makes them pointless. You should not. Just my thoughts on that. I think you really need to know why that is. So let's keep moving. Clear Linux, man. Creative and unique. I mean, there's really only one spot for Clear Linux. I like it. When it comes to swapd, the package manager, it's really neat. The performance on Intel systems is great. This is an Intel-backed distribution. Clear Linux is a very interesting one. It is also very difficult to break, but it's also very difficult to set up like development environments and build packages and install things from source, because almost everything wants to be a container on Clear Linux. So you're installing a lot of flat packs when dealing with Clear Linux. So there's a limited use case, but I really like how they've designed the system. And instead of like a lot of these distros here, they kind of are designed the same way. Clear Linux had at least a lot of out-of-box thinking when they designed it, where they really leveraged the hell out of systemd. Like systemd boot, they were one of the first distros to switch to that as the main. They don't use fstab, or fstab as I like to call it, for mounting drives. They use a systemd auto mount. They really do leverage a lot of the systemd services, and there was some really neat, unique things about Clear Linux. Would I use it for a daily desktop? Hell no. But I really appreciate it. It really opened my eyes to some very unique things with the distro itself. Even though it's not really a desktop distribution that I would recommend, it still had so many just out-of-the-box thinkings that it wasn't just a copy-paste job like all these pointless distributions that just themed things out a little bit, installed a couple programs, then just used everything the same as the actually truly beneficial distros that are above it. So that's where that is. And in that same realm, when it comes to creative and unique, Gentoo, where are we gonna put Gentoo? Now, if I put it here, I would be murdered tomorrow, so it cannot go into the pointless category. We could put it in the devil category, and people probably would be okay with that, but I don't think that's true either. It's really kind of an amazing distribution. I think the only thing we can agree on is it's not amazing for new users. It could go either creative or unique. I would say probably creative and unique, because when it comes to Gentoo, you can go with a lighter weight Linux distribution, lighter weight Linux kernel. So when you're building out Gentoo, you're building the kernel, and you can really make some really interesting choices. I'd almost use Gentoo for a specific use case Linux box. So if it was only going to do one thing, and I know I don't need to touch it again, like a good idea is like a kiosk, or maybe a menu at a restaurant, and I was building out a system for that type of business, I might even use Gentoo because I could really strip it down and only install one package and just have it do that one thing and do it well. And it's really neat. In using either building from source or using emerge, Gentoo's a neat thing, even though a lot of people like to troll with Gentoo. It's not really a Linux desktop per se. I don't treat it as such. I think a lot of tryhards, like, I use Gentoo as my daily desktop. I think it's a good practice just for like a month just to say you did it. But it would definitely get a little bit trying in times. So yeah, that's kind of nice. So I would say you can be really creative, really unique, and you can change almost anything I think you can even choose the init system in it. So let's say you don't want to do systemd. I think you could switch that around to probably like a, you know, jeez, I'm having problems. I'm drawing a blank on that. I guess, probably Void Linux, I want to say. Void Linux, I'd also put in that same category because you don't have to use systemd. You can use something else. I want to say like OpenRC or the old initd type stuff. There's so many different init systems you can do that makes the startup like instantaneous. Alpine Linux also doesn't use systemd, and these startup times, ridiculous. You'll go from like 10 seconds to like 1 second startup because there's just such a small init system. So really creative and unique. Void and Gentoo, I almost give them the same type of treatment because they're unique. They have like their own kind of kernel. It's not just a fork, and you really can do a lot of out-of-box thinking here where it's just kind of grugs. But the skill cap on both of these distros is high because you got to know what I just said. You got to understand init systems. You got to understand how most Linux distributions are structured to really use them properly. So run it. That's it. It's run it. Thank you. I was like, I know I'm saying this wrong. Someone's going to correct me. So I like those. And that's why I will never put something that doesn't just copy paste like all these do in this really creative and unique one. Kubuntu. Now, most people would expect me to toss Kubuntu in the pointless category because it's just a fork of Ubuntu, but it has a ton of popularity. There's a lot of polish with Kubuntu, and I have a soft spot for the Kubuntu team. I'm going to put Kubuntu amazing for new users. I know that's crazy. People are like, what the hell? You've changed. You've changed, Titus. How do you throw Kubuntu in amazing for new users? I would say just the out-of-box experience with it is really good, and for a new user, a lot of times it just does everything they want, and I still feel like KDE is an amazing experience for those Windows users that are coming over that aren't necessarily noobs and know a bit about computers. I feel like Kubuntu is kind of where they settle, you know, that not probably like around the Windows power user coming over to Linux. I'd almost recommend a Kubuntu because there's a lot going on with it and a lot to learn. And it's actually kind of touching with kid gloves at the start there, and it kind of gives them this nice, comfortable environment. I know that's wild. I know that's wild. But, you know, that's because I've always said, Ubuntu, where do we put it? I mean, it's just devil tier. I mean, you guys knew that before you even clicked on the stream or the video. Ubuntu's going to the devil tier. It's just like all I have to say is apt install Firefox, and then it does a snap. Like, what the hell? I mean, it runs like a turd, and it just is not a great experience, which is sad because once upon a time it was really good. And I used to just, you know, even in Ubuntu 18 and Ubuntu 20. Using the server version, you could disable snaps and really kind of get by with it. So hopefully they do something, but for now I think we leave it in the devil tier and move on. It's disappointing. I want them to do better. I really do. But snaps, please just stop shoving snaps down our face. Maybe it'll eventually leave devil tier. And probably not. Lubuntu, you know, Lubuntu could go in the pointless tier because it's another fork of Ubuntu, much like Kubuntu. But you know what? It's still one of my favorite lightweight desktops. It's LXDE, I think, or no, I think they moved it to LXQT, and it's a really neat lightweight. If you got a potato and you know Ubuntu or that app system, it's really not a bad starting point for a super lightweight distro. I kind of have a soft spot for lightweight distros, and you'll see that I don't put a lot of them in the pointless tier, just because with lightweight distros, they don't feel so pointless because they don't install a bunch of garbage. And I can appreciate that. So it kind of makes it less pointless to me. So that's kind of where I'm at. We got Linux Mint coming up next. Oh, where do we put Linux Mint? I mean, really? Does it even need an explanation? Linux Mint is an amazing new user. if you got a grandpa out there and he's just wanting to pound around on his computer and not wanting to break things and download videoplayer.exe, or on his Windows thing, and you want to convert that to a Linux box, I think Linux Mint's the natural choice for a noob. It's hard to break. It uses the Cinnamon desktop environment. It's just a very good ecosystem. The tool set's amazing out of the box. Everything has a GUI. It's a great spot for noobs. It just really is. For a newcomer, you really can't beat Linux Mint. And Clem is amazing dev. He's the lead dev for Linux Mint. Love him to death. He was one of the very first people to stand up to Ubuntu and say, hey, I'm not using snaps. I don't like them. We're moving. And I get it. I get it. Oh, I see PC Linux OS in chat. PC Linux OS. This hurts. This hurts my heart. There's a good friend of mine, Matt Hartley, that loves PC Linux OS. Still uses PC Linux OS to my knowledge. But it hasn't seen any updates in like 3 years. It goes in the pointless tier. Now, 10 years ago, I mean, hell, even like 3 or 4 years ago, PC Linux OS, it did things a little different from Debian. It's a Debian fork, or downstream from Debian, and it had its purpose because it actually had a lot more compatibility with certain devices. And back when Linux was more scattered, PC Linux OS kind of had that niche of, hey, your device will have a greater chance of working on our distribution. So I appreciate PC Linux OS, and it was really neat back in the day. But this is the tier list for 2023, and it ends up in the pointless tier because I really don't see a pointless point to it today. Sad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to those diehard PC Linux OS users out there. But it is what it is. Moving on, we got Deepin Linux. This is a hard one for me. This is a hard one for me because, yes, it's another Ubuntu fork. Yes, it's just another desktop environment, but it is its own desktop environment with Deepin. Much like Elementary OS. We could put it next to Elementary OS, but Deepin does something better than most other desktop environments. So I think we have to put it in the creative and unique category because it does scaling pretty well. Not terrible. It does scaling better than most other desktop environments. And it looks pretty sleek and it's pretty polished. So I'm going to give Deepin creative and unique, even though it's a Ubuntu fork. And it's mainly for the desktop environment. Even though I think the distribution itself is kind of pointless. I almost feel like just tossing it over here because the desktop distribution's kind of pointless, but the desktop environment's not. It's a difficult one for me. Where Elementary, I have a hard time using any time on anything. Where Deepin feels like, you know, you can toss it on an Arch, you can toss it on a Debian, but this is a distribution review after all, and the distribution I do find kind of pointless, where I'd much rather just use an Arch or Debian. So we're gonna leave it in the pointless tier after a little bit. Puppy Linux. You guys want to do Puppy? Thoughts on Puppy? Where do we put Puppy? I haven't really used Puppy that much, but I mean, with Wolf and Bark and all the weird commands and its strange package manager, at the end of the day, I think we put it in the potato tier. It's a lightweight distro. It has some unique ideas when it comes to package management. Hasn't seen many updates, but it's interesting enough to where I don't feel like it's pointless. I feel like it's doing things a little bit different than just a copy-paste job. So I can't really give Puppy the pointless tier treatment. It's unique enough where I'm like, okay, we're not gonna give it that treatment. All right. PopOS. That's a hard one. I used to love PopOS. I used to put it right here. If this video was done a year or two ago, this would be right here. If this video is done 2 years from now, it might be right here. Or maybe it's even here with a cosmic desktop. But right now it's just an Ubuntu fork. And it's kind of pointless. I hate saying that about Pop. I love you, System 76. And they had some really unique things going for it. Like the tiling in GNOME, kind of a game changer. Like, wow, the tiling, you just tick the little tiling box and then you could do stuff. It was really intuitive. They have a really gifted team. This will float around. 2 years ago, maybe right there. And then Ubuntu kind of went to crap and they kind of dropped to pointless. But then they did some stuff with their GUI and now they're doing stuff with their tool set. Instead of like using GTK or Qt, they're doing their own thing. I see this moving. I see it moving to somewhere else. But today, it's pretty pointless. Ah, that hurts. That hurts. It's junk though. For right now. But I can't wait to see what System 76 does with it. That's the thing I would put there. That's where I'm hesitant for the people just like screen capping this. I kind of want to put it somewhere else because I just know it's gonna move. They're making moves. Yeah. And it comes with NVIDIA drivers. That's true. And it was one of the first ones. But nowadays, like when it comes to installing NVIDIA drivers on Arch and Debian, it's not the challenge it once was. It's actually... they've done such a good job. Like, you got to remember, this tier list a year or two ago would be way different with Arch and Debian because Debian's installer didn't include, hell, the fact you couldn't even find a non-free ISO without like 30 minutes of hunting through their stupid links, like just on the last release. Debian's moved up, man. And that's really, as Debian stepped to the plate and fixed a lot of things, it kind of made a lot of these distributions pointless. They kind of lost their way because the whole point was Debian kind of sucked. Like Feren OS, Parrot, Kali, PCLinux, all these guys. You could even throw Elementary and Deepin. All these guys, I mean, their installers have always been intuitive. And there was a time where they would probably be somewhere different on the list because Debian's installer sucked so bad. Or it was hard to find the ISO. But that's not today. And that's where they end up right there. It's kind of an interesting point. So, yeah. MX Linux. It's also a Debian fork. I would put that last year. I probably would have put it amazing for new users. It does have a really good tool set. It does have an intuitive setup. Much like I would even say Feren and Kali and them. But these days I just say, use Debian. Sorry, MX Linux. I hate to do that to you, as I think it would score a lot higher, but as Debian's stepped up, a lot of these have become redundant. There's nothing unique about MX Linux that I'm like, wow, I really wish I had that on an install. I really wish it did this. A lot of that I'm just like, I'll just do it in Debian. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. KDE Neon. Ugh, I hate this distribution. Sorry, I've never liked it. I would like to put it in Creative and Unique because it's the testing ground for my most favorite of all time desktop environments, KDE. KDE Neon, I really want it to be good, but it is jank AF. I'm telling you, when it comes to KDE Neon, like what the hell were they thinking? It's a fork of Ubuntu, which Ubuntu is a fork of Debian. And then they decided, hey, let's toss another package manager on top of apt to update the KDE components because we want it to like bleeding edge. It's really, I hate this distribution so much. It's obviously pointless, but it does have a point. It's a dev environment for the KDE team. It's just nobody should use it. I love KDE, but KDE Neon is just such a flawed distribution that it's hot garbage. I got nothing good to say about KDE Neon. I've never had anything good to say about KDE Neon. I've hated it since the day I installed it, and the day I uninstalled it was the happiest one of my life. I just wish it was its own thing and it never saw the light of day because I don't know anybody that daily drives it. And if you do, you're crazy. Or you're a KDE dev. And you need to be that testing environment for KDE. I love KDE. I just don't like KDE Neon, even though you think I would like it. Ah, I wish it was better. Oh, man, we don't have Slackware. Oh, no, we have Slackware right here. I mean, that's Creative and Unique. It's the OG. I can't put Slackware anybody. I mean, I'd love to put Slackware higher on the list. I mean, it is the oldest running Linux distribution out of anything that you see today. This is the OG. It came before Debian. It came before, I think, anything. At least it's the more longest running Linux distribution, I want to say, that's still releasing stuff. I mean, have you ever used it? It's weird. It's a weird deal. Slackware. I don't want to say anything bad about it. So let's move on. I'm gonna just give it its props where it's due. It's old, and it's the oldest long and running thing. But let's move on. Oh man, yeah. Peppermint. Peppermint's neat. I like it. I think they have like their own like package manager and launcher. It's a lightweight Linux distro. Right in here. It's probably one of my favorite lightweight distros. I'd put it probably a little bit above Lubuntu sometimes. It just depends on what I want to do and my goals. If I'm installing a lot of packages on a lightweight distro, I'll probably lean more towards Peppermint. Where if it was kind of like there, I kind of like both of these designs. Really neat, but obviously it's the potato tier. You know, you're not going to actually run this on a full-blown desktop. That's more for, you know, pimping out your toaster. Or that netbook you got as a gift from the computer that you fixed at your neighbor's house. You know, that's where this potato tier comes in. And Peppermint's probably the most interesting, probably the one I'd probably rock for a lightweight. It's neat. Solus. For Solus, I would say creative and unique. A lot of people don't give Solus credit. They're not just another fork. They do their own Linux kernel build. They're not just like a fork of Debian like so many of these distributions, or a fork of Arch like the rest of these distributions. Solus does their own deal, and they have their own, I think it's Budgie environment, and they do their own desktop environment. They do their own kernel. It's a really neat project. It is unique. I'd spent some time on it. I don't particularly like it because it's just so niche. And that's kind of where its downfall is it's a little too niche. But at the same time, I don't have anything bad to say about that experience with Solus. It's just not something I'd rock for a daily driver kind of thing. So, Tails, I mean, geez. Tails, well, I mean, there's no other tier to put Tails in. It's really great. I think it was actually banned in some countries, which was hilarious. If you're unfamiliar with Tails, it's like a live environment where it loads the entire Linux thing into memory. You can do all your changes and stuff, and then as soon as you turn off the computer, it flushes everything. So it's a really neat, secure distribution. That's why I think I want to say like got outlawed in France or something, or it was a proposed bill to outlaw Tails because it was a hacker's distribution, or you know, people up to nefarious things like why don't they want the information saved on the computer, where Tails, obviously it flushes stuff from memory. I really want cubes in here. Is there oh, I don't have cubes. Cubes and Tails are right there. I like cubes a little bit better than Tails if you're really interested in security. Like, that's the distribution that Edward Snowden uses. I love how it containerizes everything. If you're interested in security and privacy, containerization is really something you have to learn, you have to get good at, and how Cubes does it with virtual machines does a really great job. If you just want to like do one thing and just have it wiped off at the end of your session, Tails is okay. But for me, it's like, there's nothing I would need that for. If I was more concerned with privacy and stuff, obviously, Cubes is where I'd want to live. A very complex distro. I did a couple videos on my main channel about it a couple years back. And sadly, I don't have it in here. I don't think, which, yeah, that's tinycore. Tinycore goes right into lightweight. It's an interesting one. I probably need to mess around with tinycore a little more. I can't remember exactly the desktop environment that comes with tinycore. Let's go tinycore wiki. It's using BusyBox and FLTK. Distribution notable size between 11 and 16 megs. Yeah, I mean, wow. That's pretty cool. I need to mess around with tinycore a little more. Definitely unique and awesome. But wow, look at that. It only needs 46 megs of RAM to run. You can use it on a Pentium 2. So, I mean, this is like the epitome of lightweight when it comes to tinycore. So, yeah, that's cool. I can appreciate that. Zorin. Zorin, it's like a Chromebook. That's what I think of. It's like a Linux version of Chromebook. I feel like putting it in the amazing for new users because it does have a very clean, polished one. It is paid. I think the pro version. It does have a free tier, so that should be noticed. I don't know if I'd put it here though. Like, for me personally, I'd always recommend usually Kubuntu or Linux Mint, but there are people that do like Zorin that are brand new. I'm just not one of them. There's a lot of polish there, and it does have a little paid option, and it does offer some support, so I guess you could put it for... I think if you need support and you want a really like Fisher-Price Linux experience, Zorin's there, because you could buy it and get limited support and have a pretty polished environment. I'm going to put it in amazing for new users because it does offer something that Mint or Kubuntu doesn't. It just... I just don't like it. But at the same time, I do know there's gonna be a user in there where Mint or Kubuntu doesn't fit where their Zorin does. So it does fill this like really tiny niche. There's nobody I know that it would fit. I mean, that's hard. It could be the devil too because it costs money. But I mean, it's like, it's just, that's a hard one to place. That's probably the hardest one for this entire thing. A lot of these is just immediately right there. It could go into devil tier, but I mean, I kind of want to leave it in amazing for new users, even though I never recommend it. I'm so conflicted. So conflicted with it. Yeah. It's not, just, I don't know. I mean, it is good for new users, I think. Paid support, I mean, it has all that. I mean, where these don't offer that. That's the thing, it fits that niche. Like, the truly noob user, like super noob, there's something with Zorin. I mean, I almost feel like just installing it. But I'd say this is probably the tier list I would use for the top 40 or so distros here. Was there any I missed? Yeah. Oh, was there any I missed in chat? What do you guys think? What about antix? I think we put antix. Antix is right here. VanillaOS. VanillaOS seemed like a gimmick to me. Gimmick OSs don't really make it into here. That's like a bedrock for me. It's like, what? Vanilla, no, that's unique. It's an immutable atomic Ubuntu-based distribution that receives updates at the right time without sacrificing. I do see this being almost the future of Linux desktop for corporations. Having the mutable and seeing that work at such a large scale for the Steam Deck, I'd like to crap all over this, but I get it. Immutable and atomic, I definitely see that becoming more of a thing, especially for the new users that don't want their system changing, and they don't want to tweak, and they don't want to change anything. I could see that becoming a thing. Yeah. Nobara OS. Nobara is cool. Nobara should be on this list. I would put it in amazing for new users. So if you're a Nobara user, and I would say it gives the best, it's based on Fedora. So if you're not familiar with Nobara, it's run by Glorious Eggroll. It's based on Fedora, which I already put Fedora in the devil tier here. But the fact Glorious Eggroll does so many customization, and he's so familiar with every single tweak in Linux, and he does all those changes to Nobara. If you don't want to change anything and you want the best gaming experience out of the box, there's not going to be a better distro for you. Nobara is going to be it. So it depends on what you want to do. If you don't want to learn anything and you're a gamer and you want to move to Linux, Nobara would be my choice for you. And that's where it fits. Glorious Eggroll does a great job with it. And he even pushes out, like he even helps others in the community, like Chimera OS, which we installed on that little tiny PC on a past stream. You had WineZap or Hollow ISO. Those are kind of like SteamOS clones or copies. Nobara, he even sent a tweet out to him. Is like, hey guys, this is happening with this kernel. Make sure you guys update this, and this will fix your overlay issues that you're having with SteamOS. He knows all that, and if you read the Nobara webpage, he actually, or maybe he didn't put it on his webpage. I can't remember exactly where it was, but he made it for his dad because his dad wanted a game on Linux. So Glorious Eggroll made it for him just so he'd be like, here's all my presets, here's everything right out of the gate that just works the best. So for the hardcore desktop gaming user, Nobara is amazing for that new user that doesn't want to tinker, that doesn't want to change things. They just want the best Linux gaming experience. Nobara, hands down, right out of the gate. But I mean, SteamOS coming out for desktop, I'm curious to keep an eye on that too. Yeah. Zero Linux, I really like the developer behind Zero Linux. I've talked to him in depth, but I'd probably put it in the pointless tier because there's not anything in there that it gives that I don't think that you can't do yourself. Yeah, and Kali's fine. Like, a lot of people are saying, what's up with Kali being pointless? That's crazy to me. Well, if you don't know shit about Linux, then yeah, I guess that is crazy to you, and you just want some hacking utilities and you don't want to mess around and learn Linux. But if you're an ethical hacker, you need to learn Linux. And if you learn Linux, what's the point of Kali? I mean, that's where I'm at. That's the sticking point with Kali. Same with Parrot. I mean, in fact, people are just yelling at me about Kali. I'm like, wait a second. I put Parrot there too. And Parrot, I would say, is a better new user experience for an ethical hacker than Kali. So Kali is a great meme. It's great for a new user. It's great to like show off to your friends if they don't know Linux. It's fun for those type of stuff. And it does have a good tool set for some ethical hacking out of the gate where you don't want to mess around. But at the end of the day, if you're learning ethical hacking, your ass needs to learn Linux. You need to get after it. You need to be able to just install Debian and do your stuff. If you can't do that, you're gonna suck as a hacker. You're gonna be sucking at security. You need to learn. You need to get better. So for those Kali defenders out there, I'm coming after you. You can yell at me all you want, but just use Debian. But it is a nice starting point, and it's a good spot for like a new user for just learning how to do it. But I think once you get your feet under you a little bit, you need to move on. You really do. It is a bit pointless once you do that. So that's kind of where I'm at. Kali's not a meme. Chris is a meme. Fair. Like I said. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like when you look at a lot of the desktop distributions, like let's just pull it up. Probably video production. Do I have that? Oh, I don't. Oh, did I not mount my drives? I think I still have some setup here to do. CD media. Oh crap! I never mounted any of my drives. Uh-oh. I had a whole bunch of distros. I want to show people kind of a whole bunch of images of distros for this. Let's go make directory, main pool, images, drive, FCP. All right, let's see. I think I still have something somewhere. I think I have like a backups folder. Let me just grab all my network drives real fast because I want to show people images. Because a lot of people are like, I like the way this looks and feels. I like the way this does, you know, all kinds of weird stuff. Like, I get it. I really do. But you really need to evolve past liking the look and feel and figuring out how to get that look and feel in any environment that you're in. So a lot of people get confused, like, what are you in now? Are you in Debian? Are you in Arch? I mean, right now I'm in Debian, but a lot of times my environment ends up looking the same with all these different things. Hell, Fedora. I mean, there's a lot of different ones that I've done in the past year or two, but a lot of times people look at it and they get confused because they're like, wait a second. They're used to identifying distributions by the look and feel, which isn't how a distribution's identified in Linux. And if you're identifying the distributions by that, then you don't understand how a lot of them are built and what actually makes up a Linux distribution. So that's just my thought process there. But let me show you kind of what that entails with that. The FS tab, I think. Daemon reload, probably. 1 second. Once I mount this, I should have it. I think I'm missing my NFS utils. Oh, it's NFS common. So now we have that going. Now we should be able to mount these drives. Maybe. Come on. All right. There we go. Cool. Now let's go video production distribution. I just pull it in my network drives. You know me, wipe it out my system. Yeah, let's just blow this up. Here we go. Let's just kind of go through some of these, because like when you look at some of the desktops, there's a lot going on with so many of them. Like this right here is Manjaro, but you can make any desktop look like this. There, let me just close that out. So you have this type of setup where it's like a Windows 95 clone using XFCE of all things. You can make, I think last time I did this type of setup where I did a Windows 95, I moved it to, I want to say I did that in Arch instead, but you could easily do it in Manjaro and other distros. Let me get a different image editor. 1 second. What do we want to use for an image editor here? Probably, let's just go distros. Let's go Image Magic. That's always a good one. There we go. We go next. Okay. I don't use this one. Magic. Okay. Next image. Hotkey. Right now I'm running stable Debian. Surprisingly enough. A and D keys. Really? Is it that easy? No. It's not arrow keys in HK. Nope, that's not it. I need to get better on my. Still have to finish my DWM Titus Rice too, because that's something I've been working on forever. But anyways, I'm gonna get back to this. We'll just do it the old-fashioned way, where we got XFCE. Let's sort, arrange items by name, ascending, please. We'll just go large. Can we go? Oh, that's really large. I like it. It's not bad. You got the classic Windows 7 theme. I like that. This is your traditional GNOME theme. This is Alma's setup, which most Rail-based distros are all GNOME. This one's Antix, which I think this is ICE WM. So that's actually kind of like a unique window manager that comes with Antix that's really lightweight. Kind of an interesting take on it. This was Arch and Plasma. Yeah, this is a themed out Plasma, so you can make KDE look like this if this is kind of where you're looking at, which is cool. This is like my awesome window manager project. Someone's saying it was Space. Was it Space? Oh, that's Faye. Space exits. Although, what happens if we highlight them all and go, oh no, nope, that's not gonna allow me. This one was like a specific, I've actually installed this on Debian and Arch. This is a neat little window manager. I want to say this is BSPWM. Let me see. No, this is awesome window manager using Rofi and Bling. This was on Unix Porn, which was good. This one's Chrome OS. You can see a lot of the Linux look of it, which is cool. Chrome OS again, it looks like. Yeah, a couple Chrome OSs there when I made some videos. Chrome OS was interesting. I liked hacking around on it. Clear Linux uses GNOME as a desktop. I haven't tried to use, I don't think really with Clear Linux you can change the desktop environment very much. I think they might have a KDE spin, but I think GNOME's really what it likes to use. And since it's more almost immutable, I want to say, and I know it's more package driven through like swapd. It's a weird distro, but not one you really can change a whole bunch in. So know that going into Clear Linux. If you're not a big fan of GNOME, you're probably not going to like that. This is GNOME, just Debian 11. Debian 11 again. This is Debian with a Windows XP theme. I believe I was using KDE for this one. Maybe that might be another XFCE theme looking at the bottom bar. But Deepin, which I always had good things to say about the desktop environment. I just put the distro in pointless. I love their desktop environment though, and the scaling was so good with Deepin. Very, very neat. DWM, I love this. Like every single distribution I'm in now, I'm using like DWM. I really love the minimal nature of it. It's not a desktop environment, it's just a window manager, but it just does everything I want it to do. It never breaks, you can't break it. Everything is just there, and it compiles. It's kind of like I don't see myself ever really moving away with it. Maybe moving to like a DWL for Wayland whenever that gets a little more mature, but right now hanging out with DWM, I'm kind of like in love with it. I couldn't see myself moving anytime soon, and I've been on it for about a month now, I think. I don't know, what do you guys think? It's been about a month. I remember doing the chat several weeks back, and ever since I started moving to it, I've just been like, yes. So no matter what desktop or distro I end up on, I end up using DWL. This one was a DWM Rice, actually. I don't even remember what the distro base was for this, but really neat take on DWM and how much you can just even change window managers. It's nuts how you can make them look like however you want. This is Elementary. This is one thing I never really liked about Elementary. Even with the custom desktop environment, it has the functionality there. It just feels weird to me. I don't like it. It feels like I'm playing around on a Fisher-Price toy. And that's always like my biggest critique of Elementary. It's like a poor man's Mac kind of setup is what it feels like, but it's not for me, but there's definitely somebody it's for. That's all I'm gonna say. endevour.os, I think I just grabbed that. This is XFCE by default, but Endeavour you can install multiple desktop environments pretty easily from that. Fedora GNOME setup, Fedora Hyperland, which was an interesting setup. I grabbed that as well, and even made a video about it. I thought, hey, this is really unique and a really cool setup. This is like the UBAR this guy was using, and I think I used a variant of his UBAR before. It was pretty cool. It used up a little too much real estate at the end of the day, and I didn't like it on the left. I ended up putting it up here, and we tinkered around with OO, but using like OO and yuck files to do the bar was funky as hell. That's my BSPWM config that I used a ton. Oh my gosh. Where I still loved that minimalistic setup, but after using DWM, I almost prefer it a little bit better, even though I've still brought back like my Rofi bar that I was using over here because I liked this setup a little bit better than using D menu that you usually would see with DWM setup. Then you got Feren OS. I believe this was with Feren. I want to say that was using. That's not X. That's not KDE. No, that's KDE. Yeah, I see the Discover score there. It's a highly themed KDE. Feren does have a clean look to it, I will say. Out of the gate, Garuda, you can always see it because of the neon colors. Garuda always had one of the prettiest look out of everything out of the gate, and it's probably the most feature-rich distribution. I put it in the pointless tier back here, you know, but the whole reason I did that was when you look at it, it just has too much, and if you're a new user and you don't understand what's what, inevitably people, it's almost too easy to use the AUR. It's too easy to break, and there's so much going in and so many packages going into this that it's something I don't recommend to new users, just because I just see too many people fall in love with it because of how pretty it looks and how everything's just works out of the box for the most part, and then they just update willy-nilly, and there's too much going on to where they end up breaking their system, and then they, you know, talk crap on Linux because of just that whole, you know, nature, which I'm like, okay, that's fine. Will you create an update for Fedora Titus? I'm probably going to delete and archive that repo. I am done with everything Fedora. At least for a while. Just mad at Red Hat. Gentoo. Gentoo can look like whatever you want. I mean, this is just KDE. I mean, it's such a bare bones. You could put Gentoo on anything. It's a great base environment. But yeah, this is a KDE spin of Gentoo. Another version of GNOME. Looks like a lot of special add-ons going on here. Another GNOME. Rice. Again, I hate using a lot of GNOME extensions. They end up breaking. There's updates that happen. If you're going to really theme out your stuff, I don't recommend using GNOME, even though it does look very pretty. I like the GTK aesthetic. GNOME, more GNOME. Another GNOME, a GNOME Ubuntu. And then we have another, I think this is i3 Rice on Arch. Yeah, i3 Arch. This is a fun little theme. I think this was using Vim and very high res 4K monitor and just kind of making it more of a joke than anything, but kind of fun, freak people out. This is a neat little KDE Rice. This is my KDE that I rocked for a long time. I think I ran this type of config setup on a Debian SID with KDE for a long time. Kubuntu, always a good setup on the start. This was Kubuntu again. And you know what? We probably should open this up. I think you guys get the point that I'm kind of making here is there's so many looks and feels to Linux. Don't ever get obsessed with a distro and you're like, that's a different look. A lot of these distros, especially when we're looking at this tier list, it's not that they're bad. It's just, it's more of the same and they're pointless because you can do exactly the same thing up here with less packages and get a cleaner install to where if you do want to change in the future, you're not hamstringed. Because a lot of times when you have all of these decisions being made for you with these pointless distros, and you want to change things up in the future, they've done more on the back end, and it makes it very difficult to switch like desktop environments per se. Or maybe you want to switch something a little bit more deeper in the system. These end up breaking more often than not because of some design decisions these distros made. So a lot of times when I put stuff in the pointless thing, it's more just because you're better off using the pure, the good, the supreme than this. If you're like, I have to have this distro and not Debian, and it's a fork of Debian, that just means you need to do some more learning. Or if you don't want to, I get it. I'm not gonna bash you too much. Yeah, this you're probably not gonna get a more spicy take than this. Holy crap, I'm scared to upload this to YouTube. Because if we look at, I mean, shit, just looking at the comments in here, it's like, ooh, oh boy. I use PyCom for my compositor. I move people from Mint to Debian, no need to hop distros. I mean, yeah, and they're basically the same thing. Mint, the base Mint's still based on Ubuntu, but Mint is actually starting to look at transitions to Debian. They've done like 4 or 5 releases now with the Debian-based version of Linux Mint, which I think it's just Linux Mint DE desktop edition or Debian edition. So it's cool. PopOS for life. Hey man, I still have hope that PopOS can do something with the Cosmic and really do something with a whole new tool set and really make something unique. PopOS today though, it's kind of like garbage in my opinion, but we'll see. What about Lars? You know, how was I to know Red Hat was going to do something crazy? I mean, I kind of knew Harry, you know, we're with the CentOS 8 shenanigans back in 2000, and I made the video Red Hat's the devil. But I really thought they learned, but it was just like step 1 in their master plan to rule the universe kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I mean, and I still like Fedora if we're being honest. I just hate Red Hat, and I can't recommend or do anything with Fedora because of Red Hat. I'm afraid if I build something in there, they're going to do something even stupider. And it's a consideration you got to make. Like, I don't want to build a house on sand. That's what it feels like if you mess around with Fedora. It's a nice distro, man. It really is a nice distro. Fedora is. That's why I put it in devil tier. It's not pointless. It's just run by the devil. Yeah. Where is Oracle on the list? Oracle's right with Alma. So, like, when you're looking at here, it'd be right here with best for business. So you got Alma, Alpine, SUSE, NixOS. Those are great for business. You know, Rocky, Oracle, Alma. Those are basically the same thing. It's just a one-to-one bug replica of RHEL. So best for business is where I'd put that. Yeah, Ubuntu, man. They've really been pushing stuff. There's some things about Ubuntu I do like. I don't want to just be super negative and just be a big complainer over here. I really like Ubuntu's live patch. I think that's really cool how a lot of the live patch, like, I want to say there's been times where I've upgraded servers using live patch and I haven't had a reboot, where normally most Linux distros you'd have to give have to kick it and reboot it, where a lot of the live patch you can go years without a reboot, which is neat. So Ubuntu has some really neat things from the business server realm side of things. It's just the desktop, it feels like they just want to scare off the Linux community on the desktop side of things. I see why they're trying to transition to snaps, but if we're being honest here, when it comes to Ubuntu desktop, a lot of times I'm just immediately going in, installing it, and then immediately just going apt purge snapd, apt mark hold snapd, and then moving on with my day and still using a more bare bones version, because you can even see kind of the buggy nature and how it makes your server just a little bit slower with snapd as it starts up. You get to the prompt and you'll even notice some extra garbage in your prompt, and you'll have to hit enter a couple times to clear it out, and then you'll type your username and password from console to log into a Ubuntu server. Well, guess what? All that garbage goes away as soon as you flush snapd. So you flush snapd, your Ubuntu servers get a little snappier, and you don't have that extra garbage spit out on your console in the username realm. So that's still a thing, but I think really Canonical's like, hey, I want to just say they just gave up on Linux desktop. That's where I'm at with that. That's where I'm at. For shits and giggles, where do you rank Windows 10 and Windows 11? Ooh. Well, I mean, you can't really put it in a Linux desktop thing. I mean, Windows 10, with customizations and stripping things out, I'm about to be on Windows 10 for like the next month or two, because most of my new streams coming up is going to be Windows 10 and 11, and that's going to be me messing with it, fine-tuning my tool, because I'm not going to move back to Linux until I finish a final product with one of my tools I've been building, and working more in Windows. So I will be working more in Windows until it just pisses me off, and then I end up moving back to Linux, as I always do. But I really need to make more on that tool, because when it comes to me from a business standpoint, Windows is where all the money is with all those stuff. And a lot of the people that follow me through YouTube and stuff, a lot of them are more, hey, when's the new update for the utility coming out? A lot of people have asked, and there's been a lot of contributions. So definitely where a lot of my time's going this next month, just because it's been a month or two since my last update. I always carve out the time for that utility, and then also improving Windows. But with the tool, I'd put Windows in the amazing new users tier, Windows 10 in the amazing new users, Windows 11 devil tier. I mean, it's just, Windows 11 is just maddening to me. Like, it's so much more buggy with the latest updates. The last couple versions from a business standpoint have been just awful with Windows 11. It's just gotten so much more inconsistent. As soon as they switched out the Explorer in Windows 11, it just really started giving me all kinds of hell. And man, it's frustrating, messing around with Windows 11. So that's kind of my thought with Windows 10 and Windows 11. Windows 10 can be really good once customized a bit. Windows 11, I'm like, man, stop screwing up Microsoft as bad as you are, man. I really wish it was just not as big of a headache as it is. But yeah, most of my revenues from me personally come through donations from the Windows utility, and then just straight up donations, and probably about 50% of my revenue now is coming from Windows utility donations. So it's a huge utility where thousands of daily users, and people are using it a lot. And that's why, like, every month or every other month, I'm usually like, okay, let me carve out time for this, because I have that obligation. I want to make sure it stays as good as it is, because inevitably, if I don't come back to it every couple months, Microsoft will do other stuff to screw up the optimizations I make in the utility, and then it becomes bad. So it's this constant treadmill cycle of fixing Windows. I just wish it wasn't like that. I wish it was so much more consistent. And but that's where we're at. Oh my God, I mean, and then once they add AI into their Bing AI into Windows 11, I'm gonna be stripping that out, and that's gonna be fun. That's gonna be a whole new bag of worms because of all the new spyware they'll probably toss in there. So it's frustrating, but at the same time, I'm thankful, because at the end of the day, I only have a part-time day job where I'm only there for about a day a week, and I'm able to do this type of stuff and have fun and explore and just have a great time on any Linux distro, honestly. Even though I crapped on some Linux distros today, I love them all. It's just always fun because I can do whatever I want. There's so much creativity in them. And then there's the more business side that allows me to do this, and really, I look at my greatest successes, and in that bucket is that Windows utility, and it is a major driver of what I do, and something that I always dedicate time to make happen. But yeah, it is a treadmill because Microsoft always screws stuff up. I was like, can't you just use just leave well enough alone, Microsoft? Please do it. Oh yeah, I didn't mean to give you a headache thinking about Windows 11. You did, though. You did. Look at my face. Turn my face red. That's how frustrated I get just thinking of all the stuff I need to do in there. But again, thanks, Microsoft. I mean, I think back on my 20-year career, and I made probably $1 million or something like that. And thanks, Microsoft, for just sucking as bad as you do. Because if you didn't suck as bad, someone like me wouldn't need to be there to fix it. It would just work. And if it just worked, yeah, what else would I do? Where would I be? So, thanks, Microsoft. PTSD. Yeah, stripping Bing and all those things. Oh my gosh. Gotta tell you. Yeah, the Power Toys are neat. I love them bringing them back. There's some weird stuff. Make sure you keep your Power Toys up to date. I had one box that I had Power Toys on, and it went a little out of date. And with the never-ending update cycle of Windows and it constantly changing, if you don't update those power tools along with it, a lot of times things break even worse, so it's pretty bad. What do you think about the announced Copilot faux Windows? Copilot's interesting. I actually use Copilot a little bit, cons, and I've done it on stream. Most of my AI or programming streams, which almost all my streams coming up are going to be programming streams in Windows. We can flip over to Windows. I think I probably should start updating that. Because, man, it's crazy. Let's see. This is the final snapshot of our tier list. Debian and Arch are where most people will end up. Love it. We'll move on, and let's give it a reboot, and we'll load up Windows. Copilot's interesting. A lot of the AI stuff, man. People always make a big hubbub about it. I'm like, it doesn't really bother me. There's nothing of an AI I'm like, oh wow, I can't believe that. I forget. Did I make a grub menu? I thought I did. Maybe not. Oh, that's right. I forgot. I changed my displays again. It's in 4K. Oh man, I need to change my darn monitor again. One second. For some odd reason it likes to default to this. You know, some things in Windows, as much as I like to crap on Windows as much as the next person, some things I do enjoy about it, I will say. It's probably just because I know it. It's like that familiar old friend that it's always getting arrested and doing drugs, and you're like, please stop doing that. You need to clean up, buddy. But you know them, and you've known them all your life. You know, that's what I think of Windows. You're like, geez, just do better. I love you. I really want to love you, but I got to keep you at a distance because inevitably you're going to drag me down. I don't know where I was going with that analogy. That went to a pretty dark place. But, yeah. Oh, jeez. Oh, man. It's been so long since I've loaded it up. All my tokens expired. 1 second. Aha. We're good. We're good. We're good. Yeah, and I think we probably should update things, because we're going to be programming a bunch in old Windows 10. Let's first run, I guess, the tool. Probably still runs just fine. Let's update all our stuff, right? Upgrade all. Yes. Let's see how many updates we got on our tools. Whoa. Alright, we're updating 7-zip, Visual Studio. Visual Studio likes to fail on Winget. Auto Hotkey, Brave, GitHub Desktop, Git. Yeah, everything's out of date, so it'll have to go through and update all this. Yeah. Keeping Windows up to date can be trying. That's like one thing I miss the most when I'm in Windows, is having the Linux update stuff. And the updates just are much faster in Linux because it's less of a hodgepodge stuff. I mean, at least they're trying, though. Like, I think back 5-6 years ago, you really had a hard time tracking down everything. There was the rise of, like, third-party applications. Remember people buying stuff to, like, try and keep their software up to date? But it, like, never did a great job of grabbing new versions. So, I can at least appreciate Windows trying to copy Linux and have somewhat of a functional update cycle. But as you're going to see here, I bet a couple of these fail and we'll have to manually update stuff. Yeah, Node.js I use for NeoVim. I really like NeoVim a lot. I'm not very good at NeoVim, but yeah. Oh, let's see. We'll just exit, retry. And yeah, one other thing about Windows, it has a hard time killing processes and relaunching them when doing updates. It's like, that should be a pretty trivial thing to program in, but still has some issues here and there. Ooh, TeamViewer. I didn't realize I had that on here. Gross. Probably still need it for work, though. We don't use it at my work anymore, but there's still times where I might log into a weird computer that might not have any remote software and might use it. Although these days, I don't know. What is everybody's thought on remote software and logging in? Which do you like better, Winget or Chocolatey? It's a hard one. I like both. I install both Winget and Chocolatey with my tool just because Chocolatey's environment's just a little bit better when it comes to it. Like, it has more unique packages, and there's certain times, I want to say Node.js or Python. I can't remember which one it was. The Winget install of that was kind of messy, and it grabbed like an older version that it didn't quite install like all the environmental variables properly, so you had to go and edit the path in you know, sysdm and get all that going in Windows. That was a little bit troublesome, where Chocolatey went ahead and properly added those paths. So Chocolatey, I think, does a better job overall of installing tools, but I like Winget's management of the tools a little bit better. So when you do the Winget upgrade, I feel like it does a little bit better job. And eventually I do want to learn Go. Golang is probably where I want to move from C#. Once I get this tool built out, I'll probably want to go to Go. Golang. I know a lot of the community, like Rust, is a lot of people's go-to, but I don't know. I have a long way to go, a lot to learn before I go there. Go on Windows is kind of janky. Yeah, and that's where I really kind of want to go back to my Linux environment when moving to Go. The only reason I use Windows is for C# and testing my toolbox. Build a compiler and Go. Yeah. I haven't tried F#. I've heard great things, though. I really... a lot of it, I'm just trying to get back into the programming thing. But honestly, ChatGPT with Twitch chat and Copilot Copilot's just for time savings, I find. Like, it just is able to read kind of your style, and then it just autofills kind of what you need, which is really nice, but I don't use it to write functions or anything crazy. A lot of times it just saves me some time. So I dig Copilot for that. I find it kind of stupid, and a lot of times it just gives me nonsense, where like ChatGPT 4 typically does a little bit better job, and I'm able to do a little bit more with it. Longtime Linux user, over 20 years, forced to use Windows 11. Thank you so much for Windows Prep app. Awesome. Good to hear, man. Well, I'm going to be updating that soon too, man. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching and supporting. The blue screens. Yeah, I think I have gotten a blue screen on this machine a couple times for us. Yeah, I think that's one thing when it comes to YouTube and entertainment. You gotta be entertaining. Like, there's so many things I'd love to just go do, but a lot of times it's like, hey, is this entertaining for folks? And there's some things I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna do it anyways, just because it's really interesting to me. And if it's really interesting to me, typically there's gonna be somebody out there that finds it interesting too. So yeah, there's some parts of it that's definitely entertainment. I think really getting into the software development side of things, that's really where the, you know, future like business side of things really come from. Building something amazing that people use, I think, is a little bit easier than chasing views on YouTube. A lot easier, actually. I think easier and more rewarding. Swapiness. Does modern computers need a swap file? Isn't it just SSD? Sometimes you do need to use the swap file. When you change VM swapiness, I would say it just uses the swap file less. It uses it last after your memory fills up and there's no more and it needs to start swapping things around. The swapiness kind of says how much should I use the swap file. And like a 10 swapiness, it's barely ever going to touch it unless it runs out of memory for the most part. And then like a swapiness of 100, it's going to utilize that swap file a lot more than obviously a 10. Go figure, right? 10 versus 100. But that's what VM swapiness does. So obviously it working from memory is better than a swap file. You're going to get more performance. It's going to be faster load times. You get the idea. Yeah, you need swap for heavy IDEs. You also need it for containers. I would also amend that and say virtual machines that are absolutely needed as well. Do you do DevOps type content, Ansible, NixOS, Terraform, etc.? Not so much. I probably should do more. I think it would be a lot better if I did. So, should. Thanks, Papa Al, for the tier 1 sub, man. I throw swap into ZRAM. Yeah, and honestly, a lot of I have 32 gigs of memory. If I'm not using many VMs, which I usually don't, usually I just toss maybe 10 gigs of memory at a VM. Sometimes I just do no swap file. So if you look at, oh crap. Never mind, I'm not in Linux. Been in Linux so much, I'm like, I was about to switch over and show you, but yeah. Usually I don't even have like a partition. I actually did do a performance, like those that are really interested in swap, I did do a performance change and checked out the difference between the performance of swap partitions and swap files. So sometimes you just have you know, your swap file, like the page file in Windows, it just sits on your root of your drive, but then sometimes you have a separate partition. Typically everyone always used to say swap partitions have better performance. I actually benchmarked this and I didn't see almost any difference, especially in the era of NVMEs, between a swap partition and a swapped drive, or a swap partition and a swap file. So if you just want to use a swap file on your root directory for swap, go for it. That's all you need. Stu, thanks for the prime. And Michael for gifting the sub for Moon Pie. Oh, spent 3 months on a machine with 4 gigs of RAM. That's rough, man. That's rough. Yeah, envycontrol was a really cool one. I use that to switch between a lot of my graphics. It is a deprecated project now, so if you do use envycontrol, just know it may stop working soon. But it is on GitHub, I remember. And it was a very easy way to switch between and force it. I used it on my K-Focus laptop with the 2080 Super, because sometimes I wanted to completely shut down that 2080 Super. So I used envycontrol to shut down that and force all the iGPUs. It was an Intel CPU with a 2080 Super, and sometimes I only wanted just to do the Intel CPU so it would sip power. And hybrid mode never really works all that well in Linux. It still sucks. So I would prefer to, I would either just switch it to integrated, or I just switch it over to NVIDIA exclusively, and it worked really well. So if you're using envycontrol, I highly recommend doing that. If you do want to mess around with hybrid control, you can specify and create shortcuts that automatically launch with the GPU enabled. But I found like the energy savings from doing hybrid, it was just not worth it. I was just like, screw this, I'm just going to do NVIDIA when I need to play like a game or something and just reboot. It did require a full reboot though, so if you do use envycontrol, know that. But it is great CLI tool. Last update was, oh shit, okay, never mind. I said it was deprecated, but I lied. It looks like they're keeping it going. So at one time I thought it was deprecated, but never mind. Someone picked up the torch and kept going. So very cool. But I do like it. It is good. They have a GNOME widget and a KDE widget. Sweet. Chris, I challenge you to break it, NixOS. I tried to break it. I couldn't. It's amazing. Oh yeah. So yeah, MoonPie, I think it did actually get brought back up. At one time it was deprecated. I think their original maintainer might have moved on, or maybe he came back and just said, hey, let me market this a little more. It's a great one. I would probably donate to it if I used it a lot. I don't really use it much this day. Gaming, thanks for the prime. Yeah, do we even have WSL on this system? Does anybody remember? That's been in chat for like a month. I feel like we do. Hey, it's still there. Let's do a... Oh, did I change that around? Let's go. What is up with that? Huh. I guess I don't have Nala. I have like a weird bash RC on this one. Let's go install Nala. Yeah, okay. Nala's there. We'll exit out a super user here in a second. I had to do sudo before it, even though I was running as root, just because of some weird bindings I have in my bash RC. I think this is back when I made that Nala video several months back. It's been a minute since I've been in here. Ooh, do I need to install Ubuntu 16 on an Orange Pi? Installing on the Orange Pi can be dicey at best because you have to have a terminal. I got a tool that you could get online if you really want console access and you want to flash your firmware. I have an eMMC Orange Pi that I use, but it's really cool. Might have been. Come here. All right. Check this out. Sorry, I had a firmware flash tool that's happened. But check this out. All right, so you got your cables. You got this little device where you can connect into a regular one, and you can do like a console link through your Orange Pi where... Here's a Raspberry Pi, but Orange Pi has something similar with the connectors. And you can just map out where these go into here, and then you plug this in, and that way you can get console access. And then you can flash and really load almost anything you want on there. But you make sure you look at the kernel that you use for your Linux install, whether it's Ubuntu or anything. You got to make sure you have the proper firmware because it will use like a proprietary blob. My Orange Pi, I think I got the Orange Pi 800s, and those use like RK3399, I think it was, firmware blob that I have to make sure is installed. Otherwise, it won't boot. And I remember getting that type of device to plug into those so I can probably do it. Because if you're trying to just do it through HDMI, that can get super dicey on those little mini PCs. Thoughts on Threads from Zuck? Yeah. Oh, man, Threads. Like, when we look at Twitter, what does Twitter look like these days? Let's pull up TweetDeck. Hey, it didn't sign me out of Twitter. Oh... this I think Linus's meme here encapsulates my thoughts. It's like, oh my gosh, I love it. It's like a bad copy of Twitter. Like, Twitter's not great, but it is what it is, you know. I'd be happy to see someone dethrone Twitter. I just don't want it to be Facebook or Meta. You know, I don't want it to be him. You know, this guy is the worst. I'd much rather see Elon succeed than him. So That's my thoughts on Threads. I'm not gonna use it personally. If I get on there, it's just to like reserve my name, and that would be it. But I think it's gonna crash and burn, and if it doesn't, I hope it does. I would love to see a Twitter alternative, but man, I can't get behind it being Facebook. I don't know. I think when it comes to Facebook and their track record, them working with like military dictators to commit like mass genocide in other countries. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook they've done some really terrible things that have hurt humanity in various different ways. That's not even mentioning what all kinds of damage that's happened from Facebook and misinformation and that type of stuff. Oh, dude, I can't get behind anything Zuckerberg. Like, I've already talked about like the tiers of evil of the big tech corporations, but to me, Meta, Facebook's at the tippity top. There's nobody worse than those guys. I mean, I can't root for them, so I'd much rather see Elon succeed than old Zuck. Yeah, that's just my thoughts. You know, I'd put like Meta, Facebook at the very top. Below them, I'd probably put like Microsoft, and then below them, I'd probably put a kind of a toss-up between Apple and Amazon. They're all both kind of like fighting for that third spot, and then I'd probably put Google at number 4. And that's kind of like my top 4, you know, axis of evil for big tech. I would put them in that kind of order, just from general history and probably lives lost by their contributions. I would say Facebook reigns supreme at number 1 by a mile, and then everybody else is kind of like, those 2, 3, and 4, 5 can be kind of shifted around. So the biggest thing about this stream, people click on it and then it's like, oh crap, he's on Windows, I'm out. Can we bring push-ups back? I have like 5k oh my gosh. Yeah, I need to make like just a stream where I just say, hey, I could do this, because sometimes I'm like in the middle of programming, or I got something really thing and it's kind of jarring switching to working out or doing some pull-ups or push-ups. I would probably do like a counter, and then at the end of this stream, we just knock it all out to finish out the stream. I think that would be cool, to where like however many gifted subs were done on that stream, that's how many pull-ups I do, or how many subs happen, we do push-ups for however X a minute, you know, that type of thing. I bet we could do something like that. I was thinking about that the other night. It was fun, but I could set that back up. That'd be cool. Oh man. All right, well, let's shut it down for the day, guys. I think we got the tier list done. We got our Windows set up. Next stream will probably be a programming stream where we kind of go through all that. That'll be a lot of fun. Always a blast. And we'll do some, hopefully get that. We're getting close, I want to say. Let me pull up my last bit on that project. This is the Windows utility, but we did have another workspace, I thought. Let me open another folder. I think it was Win One Shot. This one we were really close to finishing, and I didn't quite finish it. We were modifying all the services, and then we were modifying still services. Then we did the registry modifications, which we didn't finish registry, so we have to redo that. Then we have a task scheduler portion we have to fill out as well. And then the store, debloating the store, Microsoft Store, we've already done. So that'll be a good stream. We'll finish that out. Probably should update all my VS Code, man. Wow. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I need to do it. Don't upload it to YouTube. You will lose a lot of subs. I'll probably put it on like Titus Tech Talk. It's fine. Like I said, I think it'll make for a good clip. We can do some of it. I'm used to people coming at me and saying not nice things. It's okay. Have you seen Windows Debloater by Millerated? Yeah. I did an entire video on it. Actually, I explored it using AtlasOS. It was really neat. And the Millerated team did a great job with a lot of that. And I think AtlasOS I probably need to revisit as well. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Sergey, for the sub there. Let's see what else we have. One thing I did want to check was... Oh, heck. I lost my train of thought. I was pulling this up, and then I completely dumped it. Oh, no. I think I didn't save that tier list. Oh, well. I'll redo the video. It'll be fine. I'll screenshot it from the recording. So I'll upload it to the Discord. I wanted to grab the Discord for folks. So if you did want to jump in the Discord... Bah. Do I have Discord? Do I have Discord installed here? Oh, no, I don't. Oh, maybe I do. Oh, no. Log in. Everything expired. Well, if you don't log in for like a month, everything expires. But if you guys do want to join the Discord, I'll try and take a screen cap of that final bit and get some feedback before I do a video on the Linux tier list. People are going to get pissed on that one, but that's okay. Like I said, I think we can do invite people to server. Invites. Custom invite link. Oh, no. Heck. Okay. Yeah, Michael got it. Oh, man, it's so great. Yeah. It's here somewhere. Yeah, the tier list is so much of ridiculousness. Like, the whole point of the tier list is so silly. It's like, just, like, if you need, like, at the end of the day, I think there's really only two distributions I ever recommend. Arch or Debian. And it just depends on you as a person and what you want. It's usually those two. And that's it. And that's, I think, the purpose of the tier list, is to kind of break that down and have people not so freaked out by selection. So it's not really a tier list. It's more of a, hey, there's really not as many options as you think there are in Linux. There's really not a whole lot going on with a lot of these distributions, where a lot of people are like, that's just a sea of options. There's so much. It's impossible to decide. And then you get that choice paralysis. I'd rather just have a standardized Windows environment, right? That's what some people think. And I think the point of this tier list is just to look at it and go, really, this is what these distributions do. And I make people mad that use those distributions, and they're definitely going to get like their pitchforks and torches and really want to come after me. But the whole overarching theme of the tier list is, really, do you want a stable distribution? Do you want something more newer with all the packages? It just depends on what you want. And then once you get the package manager, everything else just kind of goes on top of it. And these other options that everyone's freaking out about really is just either a fancy wallpaper with some different theming, maybe a couple programs installed that aren't there by stock defaults that get made for you, that you can install on the other distributions. It's really not as much as people think it is. And I tried to break that out after we finished the tier list on this stream, where we just kind of look at a bunch of screenshots where I'm like, well, actually, this is just Debian 2, or this is just Arch again. Oh, this is just a different version of Arch. And then people start to get that idea and go, oh, I get it. Yeah, Linux isn't really, there's not really that many distributions. There's really just two with a bunch of forks. And then there's these weird, obscure ones that have specific use cases. And that's really it. Yeah, and it just depends on what you got. Maybe next stream we do a Windows tier list. I'll set that up. We'll grab all the versions of Windows and we'll do a tier list. I like the tier list meta. That's so great. People love tier lists. For whatever reason. I mean, Debian and Arch have pretty much everything you could possibly want in a distribution. If it's not in one, it's in the other. Windows 7 on top. Yeah, probably. You're probably not wrong there. You know, for me though, I don't want to spoil it too much, but I will say this: I'm gonna leave you guys with this for a hint to the Windows tier list. Windows 7 is not my number one. So, XP, get out! No. XP, no. Oh gosh, yeah. It's gonna be a fun we're gonna do that tier list next Tuesday. Windows tier list. We'll load it up because there's so much to go over in the Windows tier list where it's like, there's so many nuances to each operating system. There's always something I like out of each one, except if it's Millennium Edition, and that's obviously the absolute bottom tier. Spoiler, but there's something that a lot of people don't realize about each one because I've supported almost every single version of Windows. So there's a lot to go over. That'll be a fun one to flip through for a tier list. Oh, oof. Still seeing blue screens of death from Millennium Edition. It's gross. 2012 server. The start screen though. What the hell? Start screen on a server? What were they thinking? Drugs are bad, kids. All right, I'm out, guys. Have a good one. See y'all next Tuesday. Peace.